What's up, family? This is the Locker Room Beef podcast. Happy you could join us today. If you haven't done so already, go follow us on our social media outlets, Twitter, Instagram, whatever you got, at lockerroombeef.com is also our website. Make sure you go check that out for any sports articles and everything else that we offer here at Locker Room Beef. Today, our special guest is Ace Boogie. Andrew Wade, he joins us, goes to Catholic University of America and plays basketball there. We talk a little bit about that with him, as well as college athletes in general. We also have a very NBA-oriented podcast where we talk about the draft, our thoughts on who's going to be Rookie of the Year, winners in the offseason trades, and also the playoff predictions. So make sure you go check that out. At the end, we also talk about the new All-Star Game format and our MVP predictions. So make sure you listen till the end and enjoy. Let's do it. What's up, everybody? I'm joined by yours truly, Ace Boogie. One of my guys, grew up with him. We've been best friends for a couple years now. We played basketball together in high school. We played travel ball together. He currently is at Catholic University of America, which I'll talk to you about. Andrew Wade, how are you?
Good. How are you, Kevin?
Pretty good. So talk to me a little bit about you. Maybe talk to me about, you grew up in Charlotte, right?
Yeah, I did. So I lived in Charlotte until about my sophomore years when we first met.
Sophomore year of high school, right?
Sophomore year of high school, that's right. And I think I'm pretty sure we met actually at the summer camp, the Bishop Moore summer camp, heading into that fall semester. I'm pretty sure it was me, you, my current teammate Colin Hartman. Shout out. Which we can talk about in a little bit too.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm pretty sure we just met through basketball, really. Through being around the team, practicing with the guys before we actually started up in the fall, just pick up stuff like that.
I remember thinking that you were, before I'd really known you, that you were in the grade under me, and then I remember thinking you were in the grade above me, and then I found out you were in my grade.
Right.
And so in high school, that's everything, because typically your entire social circle is in your grade.
Is in your grade, correct.
Yeah, and so then I remember we finally shared a class junior year, and literally since then, it's kind of been the start of a great friendship.
Yeah.
But yeah, so definitely. Talk to me a bit about so you're being from Charlotte, kind of grew up some time in Orlando, now you're in DC. What teams do you identify with the most? Maybe which ones are the most important to you, which ones you follow, and why?
So like you said, I did live in Charlotte before Orlando, and now I'm up in DC for school. But I've moved around a little bit. I've lived in Dallas, I've lived in Boston. Lived in Charlotte for 6 years and then Orlando for 4 more years. So for me personally, I'd say in my younger years, I more identified with kind of all the Boston sports teams, especially because my mom's presence growing up in Boston, living there her whole life. So I was a huge Celtics fan, Red Sox, Patriots, and I would live and die by them. And that kind of changed when I moved down to Charlotte in middle school. There's less Patriots fans, less Red Sox fans, big Panthers fans, and obviously the Patriots and the Panthers having that rivalry.
Yeah.
It didn't exactly go well. So I'd still say I still support those teams, but obviously not to the extent I used to.
Yeah.
But I mean, definitely being here in DC, I found myself more of a Wizards fan in the past 3 years. Especially because of John Wall. I absolutely love John Wall. I think he's a beast. But I would say the Wizards, probably the one team that I would most identify with right now.
Wow, okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'm a little hurt. Our listeners don't know, but right now you're wearing a Magic shirt. What? So that's interesting. Also happens to be my team, so that's interesting. Yeah. And what I thought you would say is your team, even though they suck, but I get it. You've gone on. You're a die easy Magic fan. I'm sure as soon as they get a good player for 4 years before we trade them, you're going to be all about the Magic team. Oh my gosh!
I did try to be patient. I tried to be patient. but the Magic did not, and they still have not done anything that.
Were you in Orlando during the Dwight Howard era?
I was right at the tail end of it. So I think my first year was actually the year that he left for Los Angeles. So, and I expected, I was a Magic fan when I first moved to Orlando. I mean, I was pretty excited. But in the years after Dwight, there's just been nothing going on.
Yeah.
Just a lot of.
We don't have to talk about that.
It's
a
that's
sore
a whole
subject.
different story, right?
Sort of the reason for this podcast is I want to focus on other sports, not just the Magic.
Not the Magic.
Because there's not much to talk about. But okay, I see you on that. So talk to me a little bit about now you're at CUA, which for people who don't know, it's Catholic University of America, D3 basketball school, probably, I don't know, one of the top 20 D3 programs in the nation. So it's an awesome experience for you, which obviously I try to keep tabs with. This year you're hoping and thinking you're probably going to start or at least be a very regular rotation player.
Right.
Along with one of our other ex-teammates, our point guard Colin Hartman, so we can shout out to him.
Well, me?
Shout out him.
But yeah, I think he's going to be a great addition for you guys this season. I love that guy. He's the ultimate teammate and also like a very stereotypical jock.
He's an idiot.
I mean,
He is.
point guard of the basketball team, quarterback of the football team,
state
championship.
He is.
My boy beat what's his name? The Florida quarterback right now.
Oh, Felipe Franks.
Yeah, Felipe Franks.
He beat him out.
Yeah, he beat him. He had a better game than Felipe Franks, and Felipe is at Florida right now.
Starting quarterback, yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy. But so I think that guy's a huge asset for you. Probably the most athletic white guy I've ever met. Not that white guys can't be athletic, but they can.
Oh, wow.
So, I definitely think he'll be awesome for you. So talk to me about what it's been like to sort of transition, because I think a lot of people can identify with high school. A lot of people are able to play high school ball, but obviously it's a different, no pun intended, it's a different ball game when you're in college and playing, like seriously like that every day. So how's that been like? Is it overbearing, and is it like everything you imagined? Yes, no? Tell me more.
It essentially is kind of what I expected, to a degree. But I will say probably the biggest transition that I had was just making that jump from high school to college. Was the level of competitiveness with who you're playing with, who you're practicing with, even who you're lifting weights with, stuff like that. I think in high school, if you go on to play in college, you're probably one of the top 2 players on your team, 2 or 3 players on your team.
For sure.
And so to head to college, you're going to be playing with all the top players on those teams. So definitely just seeing the level of preparedness that the other players have is definitely something that was new to me. And then just practicing with guys that are as good as you, that are better than you. It only makes you better, essentially. So that was a big jump for me, but I absolutely love it. We're only about 10 days out from the season now, maybe 9 days.
Nice.
We officially start October 15th, so.
Yeah, that's just a couple days before NBA starts.
Yeah, it is. So my life out of season and during the season is completely different. Yeah. That's kind of something I was talking about with Colin this week, but just the level of focus during the season is so narrow. And it's pretty cool to see, for those 4 or 5 months, you really are locked in with that group of 20, 25 players and the staff, all on the same mission, which is pretty exciting. So yeah, this will be my junior year. Last year we finished 17-9, which wasn't terrible. It sounds like a good record, but I would say it's kind of an off year for us. Didn't really have the leadership that we needed
when it matters.
We didn't have kind of that defensive mindset that we needed as well, and it ended up hurting us. So we lost in the conference semifinals last year. Graduated 2 seniors. One of them, Louis, he provided 25% of our scoring, which is a huge amount. It's a huge amount. He was all conference first team. We're bringing back a lot too. We only graduated 2 players, like I said, bringing back the majority of our scoring. I think we have a really good sophomore class. So they're obviously freshmen last year, getting used to the system and stuff like that. But I think our sophomore class is really strong.
Talk to me a little bit about when you're when you have teammates that come in and they're trying to be a part of the system and they're adapting from high school to college and it's a little more serious, like how does the adaptation process go, along with how does that I don't want to say recruiting, but how does that sort of happen where you try to make sure like a guy is really going to be, engaged in being a part of the team, not just playing basketball, but being a part of the lifestyle?
I think from a recruiting standpoint, I think we're kind of looking at players who do the little things, essentially. So, I mean, yeah, they're going to score, they're going to get rebounds, but see what kind of deflections they're getting, how they're stopping the ball, all that little stuff. Is what we recruit to, is our type of game that we play here at Catholic.
Right.
And so once you bring those guys in, and they come and actually see the culture here, their first few weeks through workouts, stuff like that, they tend to pick it up pretty quickly. And for those that don't, I mean, there are some obviously that don't. They usually end up just getting cut. But most guys usually get with the program pretty quickly. Our coaches are pretty strict on that too, the first few weeks. Just getting everyone up to date with the system, getting everyone on the same mindset. Right. So, I'd say that's the kind of kids that we're recruiting here.
And how much are you paying them?
$100,000. Shout out, Patino.
Shout out.
Shout out to Rick Pitino. I had a tweet, I don't know if you saw, from the Locker Room Beef account that was basically like, said something along the lines of, Rick Pitino is like the teacher that just sits and stares at her computer while everyone takes the test and starts cheating.
Oh, wow.
I mean, that's literally how I feel about it. Like when everyone's like passing around index cards with like all the answers and stuff, and she's just sitting there staring at the computer.
What?
Like, I mean, that's a crazy fiasco, and we can get into that. But talk to me a little bit about like, do you notice weird special treatment when it comes to recruiting, especially when it's a guy that you feel like is, maybe a program changer? Because, I mean, keep in mind, yes, you're playing D3 level, but a lot of these guys, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, could have played a lot higher of a level. I mean, I know Colin, the guy that we know in common, he played D2 last year. So playing at a D3 program just doesn't mean you're a baller. I mean, the reality is there's a lot of good basketball athletes out there.
Right.
And so kind of bringing in all those competitive heads, what's it like to really recruit somebody like that? And do you notice like special treatment or anything weird or under the table or people don't really realize or notice?
Well, I will say at our level there's not as much of that because that kind of ties into the shoe companies and who they're trying to recruit to eventually maybe go pro and sign with that shoe company. But obviously, for the bigger recruits that we do have, there's more of a production, there's more of a show. We'll take them to the nice restaurants right across from campus, let them see a game, let them stay in the dorms for the night, hang out with students, stuff like that.
Who pays for that?
I believe that's the athletic department paying for that. So they usually take care of everything.
You have like a recruiting budget, basically.
Yes, that's correct.
That's interesting to me.
Yeah, which is pretty interesting. But it's a completely different ballgame than obviously Division I recruiting.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we were just referencing Rick Pitino, and obviously that's sort of like everyone kind of knows that there's a lot of under the table money exchanges going on.
Right.
But if you had to guess, like, okay, that's one big case. How many like Division I programs do you think that's really happening?
I would honestly probably say probably 3 or 4 out of every Power 5 conference.
Wow.
I think
you think 3 or 4 of the bigger ones?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So you think Kentucky, Duke, North Carolina, all those
Zona,
teams?
Yeah, all the powerhouses. I really do believe that. And I think that this Pitino scandal is just going to uncover more just stories that we're about to hear. But
I agree. I think it's definitely going to be an avalanche.
Yeah.
Which is crazy. But, like, I mean, let's talk a little bit about, like, your stance on, you know better than me, just how much time basketball really takes away from you. And with any collegiate athlete, whether you're D1 or D3 or whether you play basketball or you swim, I mean, reality is you're given a full-time job basically, and you're doing it for the school. And keep in mind, a lot of the times you get a lot of scholarship, if not a free ride. But even with a free ride, I mean, people don't realize how much time you guys really give, because it's not just game time or practice. It's the travel.
Yeah.
It's how much. It's like you having to make up for schoolwork because you had this or that. I mean, it's a huge schedule changer, and a lot of people just think it's game time and the hour of practice a day, but it's way more than that. It really is a full-time job. So talk to me a little bit about that, and like maybe why you think college athletes should be sort of granted, I don't know, a way of payment, or should they not? I mean, what's your stance on that?
Well, I think you're right. A lot of people fail to realize that it is honestly like a full-time job. And even when we have a practice, or maybe let's say it's on the schedule for 7:30 to 9:30, we still have to get there at 7 to stretch, and we're going to be there till 9. We'll be there till 10:30, stretching out and icing after. So it is probably 3 or 4 hours a night. But honestly, I will say that it is more of a focus during the season, at least, more on athletics than academics too. So honestly, our schedule revolves around our basketball schedule, where we're going to be traveling, what time practices, all that kind of stuff.
Right.
And the academics just kind of fall into place after that. But obviously, we're not going to have practices at the time of our classes, anything like that. But even when you're in a class, you know, if you have a game that night, if you're going to be traveling, your focus isn't going to be on that class. You're going to be focused on the practice, on the game. If you have everything ready for your road trip, all that kind of stuff.
Do you feel like your academics have taken a hit, like because of how much time you give athletics?
Yeah, I absolutely do think so. Because like I said, my mind is just more consumed with it. You know, when we're meeting at the end of the practice, we're not talking about, oh, let's go, you know, finish our homework. Let's go finish this week out with a 3.5 or something like that. We're focusing on the game that's going to be tomorrow night, or the offense that we just put in. So it is a huge focus on athletics, and I'd say it definitely takes away from academics time.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. I mean, I'm with you. People, maybe listeners don't know my story a little bit, but I also was looking into playing Division III basketball, and a lot of people don't really know how Division III works. In case you don't know, Division I and II is basically you get recruited, and then Division III, it's sort of a mix. Either you get recruited or you go out there and find the school you want to play in, and normally it's a little bit of both. Yeah. Depending on how much you suck. Yeah. And so I sucked, and so I put myself out there a lot. I literally made my own hoop mixtape. Shout out. I made my own beat behind it and everything, which is very comedic. You can watch my free throws. I even put that in there in case anyone thought I couldn't make free throws. I'm not really. I still to this day don't know why I put free throws in the beginning, but I just wanted for them to see that I'm not like a. I could make 6 free throws, so that's good. But yeah, so it didn't work out for me. It just ended up being more money than just going to an in-state school, which is what I ended up going for. And I realized like my end goal was not to be a professional basketball player elsewhere, and my end goal was to do something different. Yeah. So it's tough to bite the bullet, because especially when you play sports all your life. I mean, now I'm in college, going to a college basketball game. That was the first time I've watched my school play basketball and I wasn't on the court. Which was like a really weird feeling for me. Right. And it also sucks when you think that you can do better, but you always think that. Yeah. So it's a crazy process, but being able to like kind of put yourself out there and kind of like try to get recruited, it's crazy. Like a lot of people don't understand the hoops that you sort of have to go through in order to become like a Division III athlete. That's why I still say if you play basketball or any sport anywhere, that's an accomplishment, because there are tons of people in high schools that are very athletic, and not all of them play in college.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's kind of like you were saying before. Sorry to interrupt you. You were saying before that if you play for a college, you're probably one of the best 2 or 3 players in your high school. It's the same concept for me when I talk about like who would win a game between the Cleveland Browns and Ohio State University. It's clearly Cleveland. Yeah, I agree. Like everyone knows, right? Because those are all professionals. They were all standouts in college, which it's a funny debate, because obviously the Browns have been sucking over the past few years. But yeah, it's the same concept. I mean, it's next level. The competition just goes up a tenfold. So we played AAU together. Something that I have sort of mixed feelings on, maybe to give it that's maybe an understatement. I hate AAUs in a lot of ways.
What?
I played for a team called Team Prospects.
Shout out.
If people don't know, I believe a couple of decent players made it out of Team Prospects. I believe Tim Hardaway Jr. actually played for Team Prospects. I didn't play with him, but he's a couple years older than me. But we played, pretty big competitions, AAU Nationals. I played against Justin Anderson and the twins from Kentucky. I'm blanking on their name right now.
Andrew and Aaron.
Yeah, Andrew and Aaron. So I played against them. Obviously, both times we got housed. But AAU is awesome because you get to play a lot of competition from different areas, and that part is really cool.
Yeah.
But I hate AAU because unless you are a freak of nature that just loves turning over the ball and you're a point guard, it's a really sucky situation in my opinion.
Yeah.
And it doesn't really translate to what real basketball is.
Yeah.
And I think that sort of way of playing has now that the AAU's been established for a decade or two, like really been established, you can see those playing styles trickling into even the NBA.
Yeah, absolutely.
I know players like John Wall, for example, which you noted as loving so much. That is a very stereotypical AAU player in my opinion. Ultra beast, fast, super athletic, has the ball in his hands all the time, coast to coast.
Yeah.
There isn't a whole lot of fundamentals to AAU. Some teams sure, but like in reality, when you go to these big AAU tournaments, it's just
less of a focus.
Who's the biggest and who's the fastest.
Yeah.
Which, talk to me a little bit about your experience with that, and then maybe your thoughts on AAU.
You kind of hit it right on the nail. It is just a less fundamental game, really. It is just kind of who's the fastest, who's the strongest player out here, and how can I get the biggest dunk to get these college coaches coming up to me after this game. And I think it's a less of focus on winning as well, which is kind of more important than anything else, because it's making the game less competitive. And like you said, it's trickling down into the next level of basketball, college basketball, and even to the pros, where these players are going to get quickly woken up to the fact that it's a completely different game. The perks of it, like you said, the ability to play teams from all across the country, and even at the top level AAU, I'm talking EYBL, some of the Adidas circuits, stuff like that. I think it's great for these kids to travel across the country as well, and kind of experience a little bit of that college traveling schedule.
Yeah.
And I think that's pretty cool. I think that's great. But yeah, I don't agree with the less focus on fundamentals. I do think players are becoming less and less developed.
Well, me?
But at the same time, I think players are becoming stronger and faster than ever. So I do think there's some trade-offs of it. But yeah, my experience with AAU, obviously we weren't the most athletic. We weren't the fastest team out there. We weren't that team going down and dunking on teams.
We weren't at all. Whenever you got a dunk, if anyone got a dunk, we were all like, oh my gosh, we belong.
It was crazy. Like we had certified our place in the gym, but
yeah. Meanwhile, losing by 40.
Yeah, to a team that's dunking on us.
Yeah, we got a dunk in the second unit, so that was good.
Yeah. But yeah, I loved AAU basketball. I think our team was actually just comprised of all Bishop Moore students, if I'm not.
Yeah, just to give people an idea, like we were mostly a white team, which I'm not trying to say like that's a certain brand of basketball, but it is.
What?
Yeah.
I always think it's funny, like, look, I'm very many races,
but
so
you're not.
Just people don't know, like I'm European and Portuguese. I grew up in a Latin household. The way I always say it is, I grew up white.
What?
I played black sports, and I'm Hispanic. And so I guess I can't say anything about Asians because I have no kinship with Asians.
Right.
But I've kind of I grew up in a lot of different sort of cultures, and so it's sort of made me. But just to go back to basically us and sort of being the white players we were. We were just kind of like a lot of white teams, if they're any good, is we're really cerebral.
He's an idiot.
Trying to focus on passing, trying to focus on getting an open shot.
Right.
Which sounds nice, but in reality, if you're playing a team that's triple the athleticism you'll get housed.
It won't be.
Yeah. So we've been embarrassed before, but we also did okay.
Yeah.
So it's a fun experience. AAU is awesome, especially if you enjoy who you play with, which is something I didn't have from the team prospects I was talking about. But the other thing I just don't like about AAU, which I don't know how you change this, but sometimes you can play like 4 or 5 games in one day.
That's enough.
And in reality, it just doesn't make sense for you to sort of pace yourself throughout an entire game because you know you have another game right after or in an hour. And in reality, it's not like you have these big Subways next to you or somewhere you can like eat healthy. I mean, I remember for AAU you would play at noon, and then you would go to McDonald's, and then you would play at 3, and then you would go to McDonald's, and then you might have to wait till because maybe your schedule because you lost both games. Now you're scheduled for the 9:30 p.m. game.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so then you're sitting there and you feel like crap, and you're playing this horrible brand of basketball at this point on McDonald's.
Shut up.
And that's like a very normal thing. And then what happens is you go home in like a super tight car with 6 people in it, and it only holds 5.
What?
And it's just like a really weird experience to do a lot of these AAU travels.
Yeah, it is.
So it's memory making. I just don't think it's the best way to do it. And I'm not sure what is, but maybe adopting something like what soccer does in Europe, where you basically at a very young age, which is sort of the trade-off over there. But take like a guy like Ronaldo, for example. He, at 11 years old, his family said, okay, you're going to go to one of the big clubs. And it would be the equivalent of like the Magic or let's say San Antonio or whoever having their own farm system. And so they have like a U11 team, a U12 team, a U13 team. And so you move up. But I think a system like that is good because then San Antonio, and Orlando Magic, they can teach real basketball, real fundamentals. Because you know that a professional program is not going to want to see the giant. They're not going to be as impressed with the giant ducks and the run and guns kind of basketball.
Right.
So I'm not sure how you fix it. Maybe, but going to a system like that would literally take so much money and so much infrastructure that I don't even know if we're capable of it. I know Mark Cuban has been on wax saying like he would love that model, and he's been trying to get Adam Silver to buy in for the last couple of years, but a lot of owners are pushing back. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so I don't really know how you fix it, but I think it's a problem.
I do too.
And I think it's changed basketball at every level.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, talk to me a little bit about like a lot of these AAU guys, end up like we said, getting in the NBA, getting drafted. What were your thoughts on this past year's NBA draft? Markelle Fultz going 1, Lonzo 2, so on and so forth. Like, who do you like? What were surprises? People we should look out for, and who you think might be a bust?
Yeah, well, I'm a big Markelle Fultz fan. Obviously, he is from DC. I'm not sure actually if you knew that.
No.
So my freshman year, I actually got the chance to see him play in high school, which was pretty cool. And ever since then, I absolutely fell in love with his game. I think you know pretty well that I'm pretty big on high school sports on the AAU scene.
Yeah.
But he was one of the best point guard, honestly, probably one of the best players I've seen live in person. And almost instantly, I think that was his senior year of high school. I knew he would be the number 1 pick in this year's draft. I mean, he just seemed like on a whole different level than anyone else. So I love that pick by Philly. I think that really filled a hole that they needed on their roster as well.
Right.
Obviously, Ben Simmons. They have Jaleel. They have the process as well. So, I mean, they've got the bigs. They got the wings for it. They just needed a guard to kind of take over and handle the ball, really.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. I think JJ Redick is a huge asset for them too, because they have so many young guys and need some sort of veteran to sort of say, okay, this is how we establish a winning culture, because they haven't had that in almost a decade since Allen Iverson was really kicking it.
But then at number 2, Lonzo Ball.
My God, ball movement. That's my nickname for him.
Ball movement.
Ball movement.
I think we all kind of knew that this was going to happen somehow. There was never a doubt in my mind that he would end up anywhere besides Los Angeles.
He spoke it into existence.
Well, me?
He spoke it into existence, and it happened. So, they're a young team. Obviously Magic Johnson making the calls over there. He obviously wanted a ball handler who could pass the ball, dish it out. But he was big enough to handle some smaller guards and stuff like that. So, I'm not really sure how I feel about Lonzo, honestly.
Let me take the mic on that one.
Yeah.
Lonzo will be the Rookie of the Year.
What?
Wow.
Okay, and we can talk about what we think for Rookie of the Year predictions. But Lonzo will be the Rookie of the Year, and I know he's the favorite. But I'm telling you right now, I would put my money on it.
He's an idiot.
Wow.
Okay?
Yeah.
I would put my money on it today.
That's a bold statement.
It's not, because it's easy choice. It's an easy choice. He is a transcendent player. Every 10 years, 20 years, there's a player that comes into the NBA that changes the style of basketball, right? So when Michael came in, he sort of brought like flamboyant, dunking, and I mean a lot of players did that. Yeah. But Michael sort of made that a brand of basketball. Yeah. Exactly. And Magic brought in passing. Larry brought in IQ. And those are different sort of ways to approach basketball and be effective. Right. And then you can talk about how Shaq brought in just complete utter size dominance. Right. Mm-hmm. And just these kind of LeBron, for example, or let's say Kobe, like a guy that can just take over games. Give me the ball in the fourth quarter and I'll finish. Right? Like a lot of these players sort of adopted a different way to excel in basketball. I mean, LeBron included, just being the most all-over guy. And now look at the league. I mean, if you're not 6'7" and can guard 1 through 4, then you're a liability. Yeah. So I think, and that's a LeBron thing. So I think Lonzo's the next guy. He's the guy that's going to come in and he's going to make passing cool again. I'm out, man. I know that sounds sort of lame, but honestly, passing, like, I'm the person that my favorite player for a long, long time now has been Chris Paul, just because I think he's an unbelievable passer. Shout out. But honestly, I haven't even seen Lonzo play one game in the NBA, and I think he's going to be my favorite player this season.
I think he will too, yeah.
Because that guy is just so gifted. And the thing is, it's not because he's just unbelievably talented, even though he is. It's because he's willing to pass, and I think a lot of great players... this was something that was wrong with me, but a lot of good players, especially growing up, are sort of told, if you want to excel in basketball, you got to be able to get a bucket, boy. What? Got to get a bucket.
You got to do something.
But, oh my gosh. Yeah, and so I think that didn't actually happen for Lonzo. Right. I mean, his people don't know. LiAngelo, the
youngest,
the middle one, the middle that no one ever talks about. Yeah, he was actually the high scorer every year for Chino Hill. That is right. So Lonzo's always been a passer, and I love that about him. I love that he averaged 8+ assists at UCLA, and I love that. I'm telling you, he's going to average 14 points a game and 9.5 assists.
What? I believe it.
And about 4 or 5 rebounds.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. He can rebound the ball as well. I mean, he's
his rookie year, that's amazing. And it's only going to get better because he's doing that with no one. Yeah. I mean, Brook Lopez, okay. Brook Lopez he's in the top half of centers, but that's literally his second best player.
Yeah.
If LeBron comes to La La Land or whoever else, I'm telling you, it's Lonzo's going to change basketball.
That could be pretty dangerous.
But who else do you like?
I'm pretty big on for rookie of the year. Technically, Ben Simmons would be considered a rookie, and I'm a pretty big Ben Simmons guy.
Shout out. Me too.
You talked about that passing aspect. I think he's probably the second best passer out of the rookies. Even though he wasn't drafted this year, he was injured all of last year.
Yeah, so he'll still qualify for Rookie of the Year.
Yeah, I do think he's an incredible passer. Even in his preseason game 2 nights ago, he finished with 9 assists in almost like 15 minutes of playing. So
yeah,
and that's the other thing though. I'm hoping he translates to a little bit more of a scorer, because he only finished that game with 3 points. So I mean, I'd love to see him score, but I think Philly will be pretty good this year with Markelle at the point, obviously Embiid at center, and then Simmons on the wing. I really like that team a lot, and I love Simmons.
So you think Simmons is your pick for Rookie of the Year?
Absolutely, yeah.
But yet you think Markelle Fultz is going to tear up the NBA?
I don't know if Markelle Fultz will tear up the NBA.
Okay, now we're backtracking.
I think he'll have a very solid year.
But why Simmons then? Because don't you think there's a little bit of a cancellation effect, like KD, Steph, or MVP?
I get that, but I think they're going to complement each other well. I mean, neither of them really have any egos whatsoever. What? And they're both, honestly, pass-first players. So,
bro, what are you talking about, man?
Markelle Fultz is pass first.
I think Markelle Fultz, maybe not pass first,
you're shitting me.
But he likes to give the ball up. But I think he really likes to give the ball up. I don't think he'll be scoring a lot his freshman year, Markelle. And that's just because, I mean, he's already got Ben Simmons and he's got Embiid, like I mentioned. And even though Simmons is considered a rookie, I wouldn't consider him new to the NBA.
Oh, he is such an advantage.
And you can kind of tell. I mean, the other night when I was watching him play, I mean, he's already got a year under his belt.
Yeah, a lot of people don't realize he knows what the travel's like. He knows what the facilities are like. He knows what it's like to be a professional, be on his own. That is such an advantage.
Huge advantage. So yeah, I think Markel will take about 2 or 3 years before he's really dominating in the league. But I think Markel's going to be a great point guard for them this year. But yeah, I've got Ben Simmons at Rookie of the Year. Actually, my predictions for my playoffs, I've got Philly in at the 6th seed in the East. So
the 6th seed, that's about best case scenario.
I love
in my
Philly
opinion.
this year. Yeah, I love.
Wow. Well, I kind of hope for the best for them because one of our other great podcast features will be my boy Nick Lanaba, aka the Philly guy.
Yeah.
And he has been trusting the process for basically his entire life.
It's been a long process.
It's been a long process, but and it's funny because you definitely feel like this is the year, right? But the thing is, they've been saying that for the past few years.
Yeah.
Honestly, it wouldn't be the worst thing because I could see them. I mean, I'm not praying on this, but what if Joel Embiid gets hurt 20 games in, right? Markel's not doing as well as he thought. Maybe Ben Simmons is doing okay, but they end up getting, maybe like the 9th or 8th worst record in the NBA because the NBA is stacked.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you could be a good team and still get housed by a lot of these top level super teams.
Right.
So I don't think that'd be a bad thing because then maybe in a deep draft class you get another quality player.
Yeah.
And now, I mean, it is.
An injury wouldn't even hurt them at that point.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I definitely think your Philly stock. I think a way I like to evaluate basketball sometimes is like stock. So you put your stock into a team because you think they're going to improve.
Yeah.
Like my stock for the Boston Celtics is pretty high right now.
Okay.
Because I think now they're good, but I think they're going to be great for the next 10 years.
Wow.
I do because now they have a young star in Kyrie Irving.
Yeah.
They have a stud and Gordon Hayward. Al Horford's just a solid big, and there's not too many of those in the NBA anymore.
Yeah.
And I love Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. I think they do very similar things, but the fact that both those young guys can play together and basically just eat at that 3 position.
Yeah.
A lot of people were like, "Oh man, they got rid of Crowder." Crowder was not playing that well, and he's known as a defensive guy. He started becoming pretty lackluster toward definitely the playoffs.
Right.
So I think bringing in a young guy that's sort of just clueless and is like, okay, I just got to play my hardest because I don't know what else to do. Mm-hmm. You have 2 of those, and they play at the same position. They compete with one another, and they're good friends. I think it's going to be a great situation for them.
Do you think they improved through the offseason now?
I do. I mean, a lot of people think the Cavs won that trade, and I can see because I think it's one of the most 50-50 trades, one of the most win-win trades I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times I definitely feel like a team wins the trade.
Right.
And look, Danny Ainge, he's the best at winning trades. You can look at his track record, but that guy, he's not very good at drafting.
No.
The best player he ever drafted was Avery Bradley, which I like, but I think he's been GM for 10 plus years, maybe 11 years. And he's had 22, 24 draft picks, and the best player he got was Avery Bradley. Mm-hmm. And that's not that great. But his trading skills are phenomenal. Obviously, with like one of the first big threes and KG, Paul Pierce, Ray Allen, and to add Rondo, which they already had.
That's right.
But he, now this. I think getting a Kyrie Irving is a game changer because you need to have a top 7 or 8 guy in order to be a championship team, in my opinion. And with that, you have to have an elite point guard. No real contender doesn't have a top flight point guard.
Yeah.
You can't come up with one. And that's why I think the Timberwolves are going to suffer. I love a lot of the Timberwolves player. Yeah. But although I think Jeff Teague is an above average point guard, he's not a top 10 point guard.
No, yeah.
And I think ultimately that's going to screw the Timberwolves because they have a lot of talent. I love Karl-Anthony Towns. I really like Jimmy Butler. I don't really care for Andrew Wiggins, but I think he's a good piece for them. And I think that could be a really, really good, interesting team. For me, that's the hardest team to predict this season because I think they could be as high as like a 3 seed in the West, and I could think they could be as bad as not being in the playoffs.
What?
Wow. Yeah, I think it's a must playoff season for them as well. I think, obviously with Jimmy Butler, they're going to have to make the playoffs. But I agree with you. I think they're kind of an unpredictable team. I've got them in at 5th in my predictions for the playoffs, but it really could go any way. it really could go anywhere.
Yeah, how do you feel about any other rookie that you feel maybe that's not in sort of those top 4 or 5, but maybe a little bit lower? I know you like Dennis Smith.
I was about to
say,
yeah.
Pretty bitter that the Magic didn't take him. Talk to me a little bit about him.
Yeah, I mean, I love Dennis Smith. He tore his ACL twice now. Once his I think it was his freshman year of high school, and then once again his senior season. So obviously there's a lot of concern there because he only went to NC State for a year. But I think you were kind of talking about transcending the game to a different level, and I think he's one of the most explosive point guards I've ever seen. He's really right up there with Westbrook.
What?
In terms of explosiveness, and I was even watching his highlights this morning of last night. I think he put in 14 points against the Magic last night.
Yeah.
But even he only takes 4 or 5 dribbles down the court. So I absolutely love Dennis Smith. I think he can score the ball a lot at all 3 levels. The only concern is that he's on a Mavericks team that only won 33 games last year. With an aging Dirk.
Yeah, they were definitely trending upwards, though. I mean, I think Seth Curry has kind of like made a name for himself.
Well, maybe.
Yeah.
And I think that team is one that has been trending upward, kind of like how Miami did.
Right.
I mean, that team was crazy. They were literally opposites from the first half of season to the last. I think they went 11-30, and then they went 30-11.
They had the best record, I'm pretty sure, after the All-Star break.
Yeah, so I think Miami is going to be a team that definitely makes it into the playoffs this year.
Yeah.
Which is interesting because that's an interesting team. I like Hassan Whiteside a lot. I think he's a super active player.
Shout out.
And Waiters Island, I think, is a real thing.
I love Waiters, yeah.
Yeah, I think he's a fun guy to watch.
Yeah.
Definitely a good League Pass team. If you have League Pass, because like that's a fun team to watch. They play high quality basketball. But any other rookies? I mean, how do you feel like maybe like by a guy like Malik Monk, for example?
I was about to say, I love Charlotte's picks. They got Malik Monk and then Dwayne Bacon out of FSU, and they picked him in the second round, which is pretty surprising. I like those picks, and Charlotte also got Dwight Howard this offseason, so. With Kemba running the point, Malik Monk, obviously one of the best scorers in the country. And now Dwayne Bacon, too, both at the wing. So I think Charlotte's going to be pretty exciting this year. But yeah, I love that Charlotte pick with Malik Monk and Dwayne Bacon.
Yeah, I have a little bit of intel on Mr. Bacon.
Yeah.
I'll say this. He might be the most talented. This is a pretty bold statement.
All right.
If he wanted to be, he could be the best player from this draft.
What?
Yeah.
I actually believe that.
Yeah.
I know he was a second rounder, and a lot of people don't have him on his radar. But I've probably seen 5, 6, 7 games of his live.
Yeah.
And more that just on television.
Right.
And that guy can get a bucket so easy. It's crazy. I mean, he literally puts butter on the ball before he shoots it.
What?
Because, like, I don't know how many balls he gets to just trickle in.
I know.
And the thing is, in the NBA, it's straight swish or you brick it.
Right.
But that guy is just so smooth. I seriously think he might be a Dwayne Wade 2.0.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, I agree.
The thing that I don't like about him, and why I don't have stock in Dwayne Bacon, although I think he's great potential, is because he is the definition of Mr. The Basketball. Which for people who don't know who that is, it's something that Wade and I created in high school, which is in layup lines. When one team's on one side of the court, the other team's just doing their layups on the other side of the court. You can always check out the other players on the team. There's always one player in the other team that doesn't really care to be there and isn't really excited about playing basketball, and they always miss the layup, their first layup, and it's just a basketball.
I'm out, man.
That's what it is.
That's basically what they do, and he is the best basketball of all time. And I think because of that, he just doesn't have that ambition for me, and I'll be surprised because maybe. Now that he has, I think, a 3-year contract, which great for him. He's, if he does it right, he's set for life. But I don't see him being a long-term pro because I just don't think the attitude is there. And hopefully he can prove me wrong because, like I said, I made a bold statement. If he wanted to be, I think he could be the best player out of the draft.
No.
I agree. I mean, he can fill it up. I've been watching him since he actually grew up right around us. He's from Lakeland, so.
He can. Any other rookies you think you should get an honorable mention, or somebody you might think is a bust?
A bust. I like that.
What?
I will say, and I don't know how I feel about Jonathan Isaac. So I don't know if I want to call him a bust because I just don't think I've seen that much from him. But I honestly think that Dwayne Bacon was a better player on FSU's team than Jonathan Isaac. I think Isaac has great potential. I think he's, 6'10", 6'11". Yeah. And I mean, he can shoot the ball too.
Yeah, he's noodling.
But I just don't know. Yeah, he's noodling. He's noodling.
What?
Yeah. So, he's gonna have to beef up to some thicker spaghetti.
Really
what?
I didn't love the Suns pick with Josh Jackson either. I think he needed another year at Kansas. Maturity wise, I mean, he got in trouble off the court a few times. And I don't know. I just feel like that level of focus is not there for some reason. So I wouldn't exactly call him a bust, but I just didn't love the picks from the Suns and the Magic at 4 and 6.
Well, I think both of those picks are very similar in that they were both hoping to get these sort of new breed basketball kind of players.
Right.
You know, like I think it's a stretch, and I don't think it's going to happen. But Jonathan Isaac's upside is Kevin Durant.
What?
I mean, long 6'11's got a touch, can shoot, very good rebounder. That's the one thing that I've seen a lot of Isaac too at FSU. That guy can rebound at the NBA level already. I know he's noodly, but you can relate to this because you're like this in basketball too. But some people just have magnet hands.
Yeah.
And he has magnet hands. I mean, he just has such a good feel for how it's coming off the rim. And he literally gets easy rebounds just because he's always in the right position. And that's you're born with that. And I think that's something he definitely has. And Josh Jackson is sort of similar. I mean, more of a defensive guy. I definitely think his upside's up there, but he just doesn't have the shooting skill, and I don't think the shooting potential that Isaac has. Look, I'm a Magic fan, so I want Isaac to be great. I'm also an FSU fan, so I want Isaac to be great. But I wonder if he has the mindset. And I think he's got a good shot, but that is such a project. I mean, Isaac is going to take years to really mold into that top tier kind of player or to even reach half of his potential. I think Josh Jackson's a little bit more sure of a bet because I think he can play defense in the NBA right now at an elite level because that guy's got a great body on him and he's pretty quick. But I get what you're saying. Definitely kind of conservative picks, I thought. And then with the Magic, I thought it was just too much of a reach. I would have liked them to actually take Dennis Smith, like you said. Because having just some surety is good, especially at a position like the point guard position. So, anybody else that you think is notable? I love Frank Mason, another guy we haven't talked about. Kind of an out there kind of player. You know, no one's really talking about Frank Mason. Absolutely loved him at Kansas. I think he is such a good head and shoulders, and I'm really big on basketball IQ and mentality. And when you're a pro, that stuff needs to be there. I mean, a lot of people don't realize the grind the NBA is. You may love basketball, doesn't mean the NBA is for you. Yeah. Because you're traveling every day. You're playing. They don't have back-to-backs anymore, really, but you're playing a game every other day. Sometimes 3 or 4 games a week. And it takes a toll on you. Yeah. And a lot of people don't realize like how much of a headstrong person you have to be in order to be a really good NBA athlete. So I really love Frank Mason. I think he's the next Jameer Nelson, which is actually a good thing, I think. Because Jameer he was a starting point guard, an all-star on a championship level team. Yeah. They made it to the finals and got housed by Kobe, and I saw that live. And shout out to Kobe. But I definitely think Frank Mason's a guy that can step in and really help a team, even if he's just a backup point guard. I would love to have him as my backup point guard.
I agree. Yeah, I think that's about it for me. I really like John Collins, the power forward out of Wake Forest. He plays for Atlanta. I think he's actually going to be very good this year.
I think Atlanta's going to have a tough time this year.
I think they will too. They lost a lot. Teague, Millsap, even Dwight Howard. And it's not that just his presence enough.
Oh, I know. But like now it's like who's going to be on the tickets they sell? Yeah. I mean, they have no marketability really. Yeah. And they didn't have now they definitely don't have Kyle Korver, for the entire season. I think they lost their identity, which is crazy. I think 3 years ago they were the number 1 team in the East. Yeah. And now I think they have a good shot at being the worst team in the NBA.
Wow. Yeah. It'll be a rough year.
At least I know what that's like being a Magic fan. Anyways, any other bold prediction? I guess East West, how teams do in the season or their playoff seeds.
I mean, obviously the Warriors at number 1. I've got the Warriors and the Cavs at number 1 in the East.
Yeah.
I really like the Rockets this year. I think Chris Paul and James Harden are really going to do some damage.
I agree.
I don't think Chris Paul has ever had the opportunity to. He's never really had an opportunity to play with another scorer. I think DeAndre Jordan and Blake Griffin are really great paint guys, but obviously they're not scorers. They can't shoot the three. And so that ability...
there will be games where Chris Paul has 10 points and 2 assists, and they'll still blow out teams because James Harden will go
take
off.
over, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think that takes a lot of pressure off both players.
I agree.
So I love that pickup. They already had a pretty solid team already. I don't like how they had to give up Beverly, but I think they won the trade. They still have their shooters. So I'm pretty big on the Rockets.
Me too. You have them as your second seed?
Second seed, yep. Second seed.
Me too.
For the East, I've got the Celtics at the second seed.
Why not first? Because I actually have them first in the East.
Really?
I do.
Really? Above LeBron?
Above LeBron. Well, it's the Cavaliers. Okay.
That's gonna be
yeah,
LeBron.
Yes, above LeBron. Look, I'm gonna make it real simple for you.
Mm-hmm.
Are you ready for this?
Yeah.
LeBron doesn't care about the regular season. 1.
What?
2, Isaiah Thomas is not gonna play a lot of the season.
Well,
3, Kevin Love is gonna have to step up into a pretty big role, which I like Kevin Love, but he's gonna have to be like Minnesota Timberwolves day with LeBron on the team. Not sure how that's gonna work.
Right.
And 3, they have a bunch of new pieces. They're gonna have to figure out how to incorporate all those, and how to delegate minutes. I like a lot of their team. I think playoff time, I do see the Cavs beating the Celtics in the Eastern Conference Finals.
Yeah.
But as far as the regular season goes, I definitely see the Celtics being the most consistent team in the NBA.
Oh my gosh.
Because I think Brad Stevens is the best coach in the NBA.
I agree with that. I do think Brad Stevens is the best coach.
Him and Popovich, 1 and 1A.
I think the Cavs are too deep. Tristan Thompson coming off the bench, Jeff Green coming off the bench, even Derrick Rose. I know he's kind of washed up and through a few surgeries, but he still is Derrick Rose. And then obviously Dwayne Wade.
Shout out.
And you might call him washed up as well, but I like that unit a lot. I think Jeff Green is kind of underappreciated at the small forward. But then, Tristan Thompson's coming up.
A great 2K player, by the way.
He is a great
can do it
player.
all.
He can
Very,
defend,
very easy to play with.
He can score all 3 levels. He can.
Whenever I pick a 2K team, I just need a guy 6'5", 6'8" that can dunk and shoot, and I'll just kill with him.
But I think the Cavs are really too deep. I do love the Celtics. I love obviously Gordon Hayward coming back with Brad Stevens. I think that's a relationship that might even go unnoticed. But I think that can go a long way.
For sure.
Obviously they went through they weren't just coach and player throughout his college years. They went to a national championship.
Oh yeah, and they lost at the buzzer, if anyone forgets.
But he had some pretty great years at Butler. They both did. I think were probably the highlights of their careers. That both kind of took them to that next level of stardom and of fame. So I think that relationship can go a long way. But yeah, I trust the Cavs to get it done in the regular season.
Yeah, well, we can see how it goes, and maybe we'll tune in.
We'll come back to this.
Yeah. Anybody else? How about I think the first 4 or 5 teams in the East are sort of obvious. After that, you probably have the Wizards, knowing you.
Yeah.
And then after that, you probably have the Bucks.
I've got the Bucks right in that number 4, actually.
Me too, which is sort of a surprise, but I think Toronto maybe slips a little bit this year, bringing back basically the same nucleus, which I like. Raptors are one of the teams I always sort of support, but I definitely think they're not innovating enough, and I think Giannis comes out with a big year.
Yeah. I agree.
So I see them hosting a playoff series,
yeah.
But
Tongue twisted, I guess.
definitely a team to watch for. And then after that, after the Raptors as well, I think it's a toss up.
Yeah.
The Magic could mess around and make the playoffs, although I don't see that happening.
No.
They really could. They could sneak in at the 8, just because of how unpredictable it can be. I do have the Hornets finishing it out at the 8. One of their new guys could go down with an injury. Dwight Howard couldn't play up to his level, so yeah.
That's normal.
I think those last 6, 7, and 8 are really just up for grabs in the East.
How about Detroit or maybe Miami? You putting them in?
I do have the Heat at the 7. I don't have Detroit in there. I really like the Heat. I love the addition of Bam. I don't even know how to say his last name. Adebayo. Out of Kentucky. I mean,
that
he's
guy's
a beast.
a monster.
He's a beast. They also picked up Olynyk in the offseason.
He's an idiot.
Just kind of a chippy guy. Just kind of match that intensity that Dion Waiters plays with as well. So
yeah, Olynyk is the ugliest. Well, no, never mind. Steven Adams is the ugliest player in the NBA.
But they're right up there.
They're right up there. They're basically stepbrothers.
Yeah, they are.
Shout out.
Yeah, I like that Heat team. But then in the West, I think there's probably 6 or 7 guaranteed teams that we all know are going to make the playoffs. It's just a matter of who's going to win those head-to-head matchups. That's going to figure out the seeding. So I've got the Spurs, the Blazers, Clippers, and Nuggets finishing out the West.
So Spurs at the 5th seed?
That's correct.
Does that mean you have Oklahoma at the 4th seed?
That is correct, yeah, I do.
Wow, okay, me too. That's exactly. So because you have the Spurs going at the 5th seed, do you see them sort of being like an off year? Because the 5th seed is a pretty bad seed for the Spurs of the past decade.
Yeah, I mean, Manu Ginobili, he's coming back, but I think he can still play, but he's clearly, I mean, past his best years.
Yeah, the dude can't find his hair on his head.
It came out this week that that LaMarcus Aldridge was even going through a little bit of identity crisis throughout the playoffs last year. I mean, he was great defensively, but I don't think offensively he can kind of provide what they were hoping him to.
I agree. I think if LaMarcus Aldridge is your second best player, you're in trouble.
Yeah, I agree. And I think he really fit well in that Blazers system. With Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum, but I don't know how it'll translate in San Antonio. So I could see them getting kind of lost in there in that pack. Blazers at 6, I like the Blazers a lot.
Me too. I think Nurkic is going to be a game changer for
I
him
think so,
throughout
too.
the season. I mean, that's when you have a passing big man, it makes it so much easier for other
That's
players.
huge, yeah.
Yeah, it just adds an extra dynamic.
Yeah, so I do have them at the 6, but I could see them finishing up a little higher. Clippers, I like the addition of Beverly a lot. I think he kind of brings some, I mean, they needed a tough, a gritty guard to kind of get them going a little bit. I think they have the right pieces. They just didn't have that kind of tough mentality, that toughness, that edge to them that I think that they were really missing.
And I think it is, I mean, that's the whole reason Chris Paul was traded in the first place. They needed a breath of fresh air.
Yeah.
I mean, that nucleus just wasn't working. They need to shake the bottle a little bit.
Yeah.
I think I like the idea of Blake sort of being the number one guy on the team.
Yeah.
I was sort of hoping somehow he would corral his way over to Orlando.
Right.
But obviously it didn't happen. But I think that guy still has a lot of juice left in him. I know he's sort of been injury plagued over the past seasons or two.
Well, me?
But I definitely think he's a guy that if he's healthy and everyone else is playing the way they are, with the Pelicans, that's the best 2 big men in the league, you know?
Yeah.
I think DeAndre Jordan's an animal.
Yeah.
And the thing is, he doesn't require any possession of the ball. I mean, he does it literally just through lobs and through picking up the boards.
Right.
I mean, he's the greatest dirty basketball player of all time as far as just like doing the dirty work.
Yeah.
And I think, and it's all-star level stuff.
Right.
So, I mean, that guy's super effective. I think Blake Griffin is super effective.
Yeah.
I would love to see the Blake Griffin evolve in some ways where he's sort of attacking the basket like he used to.
Right.
Because it's just too entertaining to watch. And I think, honestly, that's why he got a max contract extension with the Clippers, because he's super marketable, and Los Angeles needs that. But I agree with you. I think a lot of people sleep on the Clippers now that they don't have Chris Paul, and they think like, now they're not going to be a good team. But they traded like almost 8 players, I think, to get for Chris Paul to go over there.
Right.
So they have 8 new additions. Pat Beverly, definitely one of the bigger ones. I definitely think there's a lot of potential with the Clippers.
Yeah, absolutely. And then 8, we got the Nuggets. I just love the addition of Paul Millsap. I don't think they'll do great things, but I think Paul Millsap can definitely add maybe 6 or 7 wins to that win total, because he can kind of do it all. I like Jamal Murray a lot, the point guard.
Shout out.
Yeah, I think the interesting part about the Nuggets is they have two really good passing bigs. Paul Millsap is an underrated passer, and Jokic, I think, is the best passing big.
Yeah.
I mean, that behind-the-back pass of last season was nasty. Everyone's seen it.
Yeah.
So that he's got tremendous vision, and when you have bigs that pass like that, it just makes basketball so much easier. Like I said before, so
the whole game opens up.
Yeah, exactly. So I think Denver also is my number 8 seed. What do you give any chance whatsoever for LeVar Ball to be correct and for Los Angeles to get in the playoffs?
I don't see Los Angeles making playoffs.
Do you give them a 0% chance?
I wouldn't give them a 0% chance, but they would really need Brandon Ingram to step up his game.
Me too. That guy would have to score like 24 a night or something crazy.
I really like Kyle Kuzma. I think he's going to have a breakout year, actually. And honestly, I think he's going to be doing what they intended Brandon Ingram to do. Honestly, I love Kuzma. I think he can really score. He's been torching it in Summer League, even in preseason, if you've been watching.
Yeah, him and Lonzo are the light-skinned gods. That's what they call themselves.
I love Kuzma. So, yeah, I'm not really loving their chances to make the playoffs, though. No.
Yeah, I agree with you. I give them maybe 5% chance. I mean, all would have to go right. Lonzo would have to win Rookie of the Year. Kuzma would have to be dropping like 18 a night.
Yeah.
Brandon Ingram would have to be dropping like 24 a night.
Yeah.
Brook Lopez would have to be like almost all-star level.
Yeah.
That's enough.
Speaking of all-stars, let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah.
NBA recently sort of changed their format on how they're going to do the all-star game. It's no longer East-West. They're going to do sort of a captain system where I believe how they're doing is the most voted player from each conference will basically choose their squad. So do you think this is more interesting to you? Did you like that format of old? I mean, personally, I love the NBA, but they've always gotten the All-Star game wrong because I'm always intrigued to watch because it's the best players in the world on one floor, which, if you're a basketball fan, you're going to watch.
Right.
But it just ends up becoming a shooting match and a dunk fest. And yes, I know it's difficult to get the players to play defense or anything. And I don't know if this changes anything, but what I do think this does, it adds a level of drama. Because now you're gonna have KD saying, or you might have maybe LeBron saying, do I want to pick Kyrie when it's maybe like the obvious choice?
Right.
Or do I pick someone else?
Yeah.
And then you have Kyrie saying, well, you didn't pick me.
Yeah.
And then you might have KD saying, or telling Steph, like, hey, don't pick Russell Westbrook.
Yeah.
What?
And I think it adds more drama in like a very reality television kind of way.
I think it does too. I think it was, first of all, it was necessary. The East was going to get absolutely annihilated, but kind of going off what you said with the drama, I think it adds a level of competitiveness to it. Because obviously, the players are going to know who's picked when and what players are picked before them. So if I'm on a team, like you said, if LeBron chooses not to pick me, and I'm going against LeBron, obviously I think Kyrie's going to go a little bit harder, knowing that he wasn't picked up by LeBron. So I'm pretty excited about it. I'm definitely happy they made the switch. The NHL does the exact same thing. They made that switch a few years ago for their All-Star game. And the cool thing is that the last player in the NHL draft kind of as like a consolation prize for the last player who's picked in the All-Star game is they get a car. So I'm interested to see what the NBA does with that for the last player in the pick or in the draft. But I'm pretty happy about it. Obviously, it's just something new. I think they'll get a lot of viewers from it.
Yeah, I think the other thing that people have to realize is now, I wonder how the NBA regulates this, but there's definitely going to be a lot of like friend picking involved. I mean, look, if you're LeBron, are you going to pick Melo or Wade to be an all-star? I mean, clearly they're probably not going to deserve it. Maybe Melo if he has a great season.
Well, me?
But Melo barely made it last year. The only reason he made it last year is because of injury.
Yeah.
So this year, there's probably a decent chance with more studs on his team that other players are going to be selected. So do you pick a guy that sort of maybe doesn't deserve it, but is your friend, and you kind of have to pick him? I think there's a lot of drama there that's going to be interesting to see how the NBA sort of regulates the selections.
I agree.
Because there's going to be, like, is Eric Bledsoe now a pick? Because LeBron, because LeBron wants to pick all his clutch sports guys.
Right.
It's going to be interesting. And it's going to be really interesting because I think it's going to be a lot of talk on social media on how this draft selection is picked. And I wonder if it's going to be a televised draft selection.
Right.
Like if it's gonna be like someone Steph and LeBron shoot a three, okay, I get picked first. How glorified of a pickup game is this really gonna be?
Right.
So I'm really interested to see how that goes. I guess the last thing I want to ask you is who do you see winning MVP this season?
I do see LeBron winning MVP.
What?
LeBron.
I see
for the
LeBron
fifth
James.
time.
Yeah, I do see him getting MVP again. Just because of how much success, I really do think the Cavs are going to be great this year. I think the addition of Jay Crowder, even though, like you said, his defense kind of diminished a little bit towards the end of the season, and he even got exposed a little bit in the playoffs. I think he's still going to be a great defender, and I think that takes a ton of pressure off LeBron because he no longer has to guard the best player in those late game situations, which will allow us fans to see some of the best LeBron on offense. So I think his legs are going to be fresher. He's just going to be more focused on the offensive end, which is pretty exciting. So yeah, I do think LeBron will be MVP this year. My other pick would be honestly Westbrook once again.
Oh my gosh.
But I'm just not so sure how that's all going to work out in Oklahoma City.
Well, me?
Yeah, I think Westbrook never wins an MVP again. I'm willing to bet my life on that.
What?
Really?
Yes, because I think the only reason he won MVP last season is because he averaged a triple-double and because we have a term for that.
Right.
But to be honest, he was not the player that changed the course of their franchise the most.
Bro, what are you talking about, man?
I think James Harden was that player last year.
What?
Yeah.
If you look at expectations and how much they exceeded expectations, Houston did a lot more of that than Oklahoma City did.
Yeah.
I love Westbrook. I think he's a fantastic player. And I think getting a triple-double is unbelievable. But I think the only reason he really won MVP is because he averaged a triple-double and everyone would feel obligated to give it to him.
Right.
And so even if he did it again, I think that now we've sort of like gone away from the hysteria of the triple-double means so much.
Right.
So my pick is a player that of all the superstars, is the one I least like.
Well, me?
Which people would be like, what? So my pick is Kawhi Leonard.
Oh, wow.
And I think Kawhi wins for a couple of reasons. One, he's the only player on their team. Now, I get that they have other players like LaMarcus Aldridge, Danny Green, an aging Tony Parker, Manu Ginobili, whatever. But last year, you started seeing Popovich really changing the style of Spurs basketball and really playing through one player, which typically is very weird for the Spurs.
Right.
And I think they're going to have to do that even more this season. So I think from the get-go, they're going to know that LaMarcus is going to be a number two. But a lot of people were thinking he was going to kind of like put his imprint on games. And he had a tough time doing that. So I really think they're going to play through Kawhi a lot. I think Kawhi is going to get amazing stats. He's going to win games for him. And although I see the Spurs not being a top 2 or 3 team in the NBA, I don't think that's going to happen. I do think they still make the playoffs and have a decent record in season because of Kawhi's MVP efforts.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm with you with LeBron. I think he should be MVP every season.
No.
I think it's weird that the NBA doesn't really discuss what the MVP award really means. I mean, because there's a difference between like the best player award and the best season award. Because like the best season was Harden and Westbrook last year, but the best player has been LeBron for the past decade plus. So it's difficult to sort of gauge that. But I definitely think that Kawhi is my favorite for MVP, and it's weird. I don't like his game style too much because he's so bionic, not only like off the court with like just his mannerisms and the fact that he doesn't smile or laugh, but just because he looks like a super advanced robot that you charge when he's on the bench, and then you put him out there and you program him, okay, go get me 14 buckets now. Okay, go slap that shot off the glass, and he'll just go do it. I mean, he's just a junkyard dog in that sense, but his shot form, like the way he dribbles the basketball, it's super robotic, and it's like bothersome for me. There isn't a whole lot of fluidity, but he's ultra effective, and defensively he's a monster. I mean, that guy's like made out of microfiber.
What?
Like he's just crazy good. So I think that's my pick for MVP.
Yeah.
What's the most crazy scenario that you might give a chance to for MVP? Like if all things go well and no one's picking this but a dark horse.
Dark horse for MVP.
I have one for you.
Let me hear what you said.
Jimmy Butler.
I could see that.
What?
Because I think there's one way that the Timberwolves are like a top 4 team in the NBA, and that's if Jimmy Butler just has an MVP type season.
Yeah.
Karl Anthony Towns does what he does and just keeps improving.
Yeah.
Wiggins embraces his role and becomes a defensive mastermind.
Right.
And Teague does what he's supposed to. But if Jimmy, I mean, my Jimmy Butler stock is pretty high.
Yeah.
I like Jimmy Butler a lot. I think that guy's got a good head on his shoulders.
Yeah.
And I think he just does basketball.
Yeah.
And a lot of players like have a lot of distractions, and I think that he just really loves his craft.
Yeah.
So I think he could have a possible, if everything goes right, MVP season, and no one's really looking out for that.
I could see that.
Do you have a
as
player
well.
like that?
I mean, I was going to say Karl Anthony Towns. I'm huge on Karl Anthony Towns.
Shout out.
I think he can push the ball on the break. I mean, he's even pushed it out after he gets a rebound. He can step out and shoot the 3. I think we saw that in a few preseason games already. And you talked about how James Harden kind of took the Rockets past what they expected to this past season.
Right.
And I think if Karl Anthony Towns or if Jimmy Butler do that, I think either of them could be a legitimate MVP candidate. Just because the Timberwolves are kind of at a point right now where they need to get to that next level. So yeah, I'd say if either of those 2 players do step up, I could absolutely see one of those 2 being an MVP candidate.
All right, well, I guess we're going to just have to check it out and tune in. I think the biggest discrepancy we have is who will be the better regular season team, the Celtics or the Cavs.
Yeah.
I definitely feel good about my pick.
I feel pretty good about mine as well. So I guess we'll see.
We'll definitely discuss that next pod. But thank you so much for joining me, Mr. Wade. It was an awesome first experience. I hope one of many. To all our listeners, thank you so much. Please go follow us on all of our stuff at Locker Room Beef. Check out our articles, check out our other pods. I hope you enjoy all the content. Please feel free to, really be a part of it. Submit questions for us. If you ever have questions for my boy Ace Boogie, let me know. He's pretty open about whatever you guys want. So just, I'll definitely parlay any information you guys need. And thank you so much, Wade.
Thank you, absolutely. It's nice to be on the show.